we will kick off. We have about 16 people online at the moment, and I saw that we've also got some people from overseas, so welcome everyone. In terms of, so I mentioned that what we're going to cover today is essentially the background and the scene setting, so why we're actually running this session and hopefully what you'll get out of this webinar, and then the 8 steps that we've got to help people re-engage Rotaract members and rebuild our clubs as well. And then we'll have an opportunity to provide feedback and questions. So in regards to the background, so I think that if we look at why everyone's actually involved in Rotaract, obviously everyone receives value for different reasons, but we all know that we see Rotaract as an awesome platform for us to contribute to the community, make friends. There's different kind of social elements and obviously the opportunity to create real meaningful change. But the challenges that we find is that we've got a whole host of, well, obviously everyone's volunteers, so that's a challenge in itself because people have a lot of different conflicting priorities. And then we've got everyone at different stages of their life, so be it whether it's studying or moving into work, and then also kind of the demands that follow all of those things as well. So understandably, clubs then go through peaks and troughs where clubs will be really strong, but then perhaps whether it's a group of Rotaractors age out and the club starts to struggle, or there's a leadership transition that means that perhaps, whether there's conflict within clubs or perhaps, peak clubs actually just lose their kind of strategy and overall focus and so forth. Then club members are drained, lose energy, and it can be really challenging then for us to kind of reinvigorate everyone and get our clubs working effectively so that, we can create, again, meaningful change within our communities, but everyone can enjoy themselves and get what they are looking to get out of Rotaract as well. So to summarise everything, our 8-step plan essentially involves firstly, understanding the motivations of our members, and we are going to go into these individually in more detail, but I just wanted to provide an overview. So understanding everyone's motivations, why we're here, then looking at how we can actually hold brainstorming sessions effectively to get our members re-engaged. Then it's looking at, all right, well, we've got all of these ideas. How can we actually analyse the feedback that we've received and create a strategy that's achievable for us to follow? Then it's looking at, all right, how can we actually, now that we've got our strategy and all these things we want to achieve, how can we actually divide that up effectively? What sort of projects can we focus on, and how can we actually tie the club together in a long-term way? Then looking at sponsor Rotary Club engagement, wrapping everything up under the banner of fun, and then making sure we evaluate everything on an ongoing basis. So I hope that as a starting point is nice and clear. And now essentially we're going to go through each of those elements individually so that we can understand why that is a relevant step and then how we can execute on that effectively as well. As I mentioned, if you've got any questions while the session's going, please feel free to add them in the comments. Alex, I can see that you've asked when this webinar is scheduled to finish. We've scheduled it for 1 hour, so it's currently 8:13 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time. We should finish around 9 p.m., if not earlier. So the first step that we really need to look at is understanding everyone's motivations. So obviously there was a reason why you as individuals and all of your club members were actually engaged into joining Rotary in the first place, whether it was attending RILA and then wanting to become more engaged in the Rotary family, or perhaps you had moved to a new city and were looking for a way to make friends, or perhaps you just wanted to look at ways to give back within your community. So all of us have a reason for joining Rotaract in the first place. And I think one of the challenges that we often come across is that as time goes on, either that reason changes and we don't identify it, or we kind of forget what brought us to Rotaract in the first place as different demands increase, particularly when we've got a club that isn't functioning well. So whether there's dysfunction or the club's just kind of died and there's a lack of energy. So one of the things the first thing that's really important for people to understand is, what's our purpose? What's brought us here? So I think it's worthwhile, everyone who's on the call, actually considering themselves, what is it that brought them to Rotaract? And then also taking some time to reflect on why you're still involved in Rotaract. And happy for people to add some comments. It'd be great to get some interaction, like I said. So would love people to put in the comments as to, why they are still, what brought them to Rotaract and why they're still here. For me personally, what brought me to Rotaract, so yes, there was some desire to give back to the community, but it was also an avenue for me to actually provide value for other people as well. So one of my personal passions is professional development, and so I saw that I could actually bring some of the things that I had used as or learned as a leader in Ryla, I could actually bring that into our Rotaract club that I had joined and actually run some professional development activities for our club. So that's kind of why I joined, and why I continue to stay is because I see huge potential in Rotaract in general to create the change that you want to see in the world. So it doesn't matter what your own personal passion is, whether it's a particular focus area, such as the environment or disease or homelessness, or whether it's actually about skill building and leadership, or whether it is about that kind of international development piece. Whatever it is that you're passionate about and whatever skills you have can be used within the platform of Rotaract and Rotary to actually change the world, essentially. So that's my motivation. Would love to see people engaging online. So essentially, it's really important for us to understand why people are here, because when people have a sense of belonging and understand what their motivations are for being there, it makes it easier for them to it essentially makes them easier to invest their time and commit because they see purpose in what they're doing. So one of the first things that you should do once you understand what the reason for your involvement is to then reach out to all of your members and get an understanding of why they're in Rotaract. What is it that they want to do? Because as you work through these steps, you can start to build on where the common threads are and where the alignment is, so that you can create a club where everyone's excited and engaged around a common purpose. So when it comes to understanding motivations, particularly when you've got a club that isn't functioning well, perhaps the board's a bit tired and so forth, start with your board. Why are they in Rotaract and why have they joined the board? What did they want to achieve? What did they set out to do when they joined the board? And what's changed? So if you've noticed a decrease in people's motivations, what's caused that? Because that'll help you, once you understand those sorts of things, that'll help you then actually look at resolving things as well. Once you've then reached out to all of your board members, it's a really good opportunity to reach out to the rest of your members as well. And it's a good opportunity for you to understand what the best way is for you to do that. Do you actually want to do that as part of a club meeting, or do you actually want to do one-on-ones and, take people out for coffee? And I think one of the really big things to consider here is, so whatever your role is, whether you're a president or someone else on the board, I think a really good thing to consider is just dividing and conquering. So if you're a president and you feel kind of a little bit perhaps burdened by running the club at the moment, if you can, once you've got your board re-engaged, perhaps, however many of you are, so say there's, 5 people on your board and you've got 15 members, it's easy to then say, all right, well, why don't we all commit over the next month to have coffee with 3 members? So then we can, get an understanding of, how they can, like I said, why they joined and what meaningful impact that they want to have. Now, it's important understand as well that with Rotaract, it's actually a two-way street. Yes, we join because we want to give to the community. Yes, we look at, we want to give back to the community, whether that's locally or internationally. But for us to stay, we actually need to actually get something out of Rotaract as well. So the getting out of it comes back to the professional development components and the social components. And then it's the volunteering part, which is what we actually give to our community. So Rotaract, or at least there are other volunteering or other community groups out there. There's so many, whether it's the Cancer Council or, St. Vincent de Paul or the RSPCA. There are so many different charities out there that, do need volunteers. But one of the things that we can really offer is that additional professional development opportunities and that social element as well. So it's one of the ways that we can kind of wrap around and keep people engaged. I am about to move on to the next step. So I just wanted to understand whether anyone had any questions around understanding everyone's motivations prior to me moving on. And if not, so for those who've joined, just ask questions in the comments. Otherwise, I will move on to the next slide. So the next element is around brainstorming. So yes, it's simple to say, all right, let's hold a brainstorming session, but you do need to consider what the purpose of that brainstorming session is. So it's important to consider, all right, does our whole club actually need an overhaul? And if that's the case, identify the elements that you actually need to look at in order to lift the club up. Or perhaps it's just that meetings are a little bit tired at the moment. And so in that case, it's an opportunity for you to just ask your members how they want meetings to run, what's the content that they want, how do they want the social elements to work in comparison to whether they want guest speakers or do they actually want to be working on projects during their meetings. So first of all, work out what it is that you actually need to solve. So what are the issues? If you're in a situation where you really need a whole club revamp, then one of the first things that you can do that's actually a really good place to start is, so first of all, the first piece really comes around education. So we recently had a situation in one of our local clubs where a lot of the members were actually fairly new to Rotaract and hadn't been involved in kind of big events or big projects. And so to be honest, they didn't really know where to start or what the potential was because they didn't really have a benchmark onto the sorts of things that they might be able to achieve because they didn't really understand what resources were available to them. So what we actually did was we got in a previous Rotaractor who was involved when the club was kind of at its peak, and we just got them to talk about all the sorts of things that the club used to do. So whether it was advocacy around polio or whether it was holding, some really cool social events like we had a fluoro bus party that went through the city and raised some funds for Bernardo's, or we held an amazing race. We talked about some of our really big international projects where we did a medical camp in Nepal. So really just exciting the members and educating them around what's even possible. And particularly when you've got some strong clubs or you've been a strong club in the past, it's a way to engage them in what the history has been. Once you kind of set the scene and really induce the energy in that sense, it's important to remind them that the club that they're involved in, it's their club. So yes, you've got a president, yes, you've got a board, but really it's the members club. That's the way that we're structured. So the role of board is essentially to implement the ideas and initiatives that the members are interested in. And the president's role is to make sure that if the board was a ship, that ship's sailing smoothly. And I think some of the time we get challenges come up when those expectations or responsibilities aren't clear. So when, a president or a board might actually have the perspective to, that well, as president, they get to drive some of the projects that they're interested in. And there's certainly that option to create visibility over the projects that you're interested in. But in saying that, you've still got to remember that it's the members club. Now, Holly's just asked a question. She said, are there really strong clubs that do those things you mentioned? Who could help to brief boards, clubs with various ideas like this and how to achieve them? Thanks for the question, Holly. Absolutely. So the club that I'm referring to at the moment is Sydney City Rotaract. Currently, the club is in a rebuilding phase. But going back about 3 years ago, the club had 40 to 50 members. And yes, the club worked with one of our Rotary clubs, and we did do a mission to Nepal where we helped to rebuild a school and run a medical camp. And I actually did a presentation to Sydney City Rotaract at our last meeting 2 weeks ago. I've got that in PowerPoint form, and I would be happy to run that as a separate session, so another webinar on just what's possible and how we achieved all of those things. So I would like to park that, but so yes, confirm it's absolutely possible. And then I can put that as the topic for our next webinar because I've already got the presentation ready to go. Thank you for the question. So I'm going back to this brainstorming element. One of the things that I mentioned was that, so it is the members club. So one of the things to consider as well is what's actually your club's brand. Now it's easy to think, okay, well, Rotaract is, a club for 18 to 30-year-olds. But I think it's really important to consider that there's a huge difference between an 18-year-old and a 22-year-old and a 30-year-old. Everyone's at really different stages of their life. They have different skills, perhaps different experiences. And if you were to brand your club for that full age group, it's probably actually challenging to meet all of those people's needs. Now, some of this happens naturally when we develop university-based Rotaract clubs versus young professional-based Rotaract clubs. But I think even within young professional or like older, so to speak, Rotaract clubs, it's even worth considering, are you a young professionals club and do you want that kind of corporate business professional development focus while you're doing community work? Or are you more relaxed and social in the community work that you're doing? And I know that some of the conversations I've had with members, there's conflict caused when you've got some members who want to be a bit more professional and other members that want to be relaxed. There's because you can't actually meet those needs. And yeah, for insight, I was actually involved in starting up a Rotaract club, but I was only a member for about a year because my personal preference is to be in a young professionals club, and I couldn't really achieve or contribute in the way that I wanted to in that club. So I left, I took a break. And then when I found a club that could meet those needs and that I could contribute to in that way, I joined that club and I've been a member of that club since then, and it's been fantastic. So I think branding is actually a really important thing and something we often don't consider. Now, in terms of when you look at your brainstorm, it's good to actually break things out into different buckets. So there's 5 things that I've listed there. So one's around volunteering. So that's from a local perspective and an international perspective. And often with volunteering, you can actually partner with different organisations as well, or with your Rotary clubs. It might be, I know, for example, in our district at the moment, we've got the Mardi Gras fair this weekend, and one of our Rotary clubs is involved in supplying some of the volunteers for Mardi Gras. So yeah, we didn't actually have to organise the parade, but we've got people who will be helping out with marshalling and so forth. Similarly, from an international perspective, I know people who've been engaged, whether it's with Rorke's projects, which we'll touch on later, or also initiatives like Habitat for Humanity, which Rotary International actually has a global partnership with as well. So there's kind of a whole host of things you can do in the volunteering space. Then you've got professional development. So a really easy question to ask people is, what are the skills, from a professional perspective that you actually want to build? Are there things that people actually need for their career, be it project management or communication and public speaking or managing people? And once you understand what the needs are, then you can start to look at shaping some of the events that can meet those needs. Similarly, from a social perspective, again, what is it that people would love to do socially? Do they have different ideas around how that's structured? Are there actually particular events that they want to do, whether it's, bowling or whale watching or, a winery tour? Like, how formal would they like social to be? And then looking at, when you look at projects, it's like, what are your areas of interest, understanding what else you can jump on board. We'll touch on projects a little bit later as well. And then meetings. So meetings is really critical. Meetings are kind of your lifeblood because all of our clubs are meeting, 1 or 2 times a month, and meetings are what bring everyone together. So it's really similarly really important to make sure that your meetings are fun, they're engaging, that people want to be there, that they've got good energy. And I think I mentioned a couple of things before, like, do people actually want to listen to a guest speaker, or has that dynamic changed? Because we've now got things like TED Talks where people can access, quite high-profile speakers all the time. Do people actually want to work on their projects during meetings, or do they want to use the meetings as kind of an information element and catch up on their project work later on? Does anyone have any questions around the brainstorming piece? Otherwise, I'll move on to the next section. Okay, so the next one then is around analysing your feedback. So once you've got kind of this plethora of ideas, it's really important to actually prioritise what you want to do. Sorry, I'm just going to read the comment that was posted. So Jen said, for Holly, for the Canberra Club, we've previously used SurveyMonkey to find out what's important to our members. And this year I did a Lucky Dip style quiz and the answer session to facilitate conversation. And with that info, create a strategic plan with lots of consultation. Was just a way to capture what's important and therefore where our priorities are. So absolutely, some of your brainstorm could actually be by actually sending out a survey to all of your members. One of the things I like about a live brainstorm is it really injects that energy component and you get everyone's contribution, which is really helpful. But things like SurveyMonkey can be really useful to kind of enable people who can't make the meetings to provide feedback as well. But B, also then you've kind of got the feedback all there to analyse. So thanks for that input, Jen, really appreciate it. So coming back to analysing feedback. So like I said, the first thing you want to do is actually prioritize the ideas. So out of, the 20 ideas that are on the table, what is it that excites people the most? What is it that people are most passionate about? Because once you've identified what those elements are, then you're more likely to actually get buy-in and people to actually volunteer to help. Otherwise, if it's things that are, I guess if there's less engagement, they're going to be harder. It'll be a bit more of a pull mentality. It'll be a bit more mentality rather than actually getting everyone along. So what you want to be able to do is start with the easy wins. What are the really simple things that you can implement that will actually engage people really well? So one of the things that I'm personally passionate about. So when I was president, and this is going back about 4 years, our club had a little bit of a kind of a negative critical culture. And one of my goals was to really reshape that and create a positive culture within the club. So one of the things that I changed, I know there's other Rotaract clubs out there doing this as well, was I changed our fine session, which was kind of exclusive, to a happy coins session. So that being, instead of having a sergeant target individual people and ask them to contribute for, whatever reasons that were raised, instead it was a free for all. You could indicate, something that you were happy about for that week, or if you'd had a tough week and you wanted to share that with everyone as a bit of a coins for karma. So we had people sharing everything from, I got a new job, to my sister's having a baby, to, oh my God, my football team won on the weekend. And it was just so much fun, and it was voluntary. And with actually raised more than double the amount that we used to raise in the fine session when we did happy coins. So that was something that was really, really simple to implement, but a massive win for us because people were excited, we were raising more money, and just created this really nice, energetic way to finish our meetings. So then the other thing to consider is democracy. As I mentioned, yes, you've got the president, yes, you've got the board, yes, you've got your members, but ultimately it's your members club. So do you actually get people to vote on, what they're most passionate about? And perhaps you'll focus on a certain area for, the first half of the year, and then you'll vote again. But definitely consider like a voting process so that you can actually work out what it is that members want to be involved in. So then they feel that sense of ownership and they know that they've chosen it. There's something that they've really been brought along the journey with. So I kind of touched on the events and projects that will provide the most energy. And the last thing is, which ideas fit your brand and target market? So if you are a university club, perhaps then things that would be really useful for uni students is doing like CV and interview skills if you look at a professional development experience. But if you're looking at people who are young professionals, rather than CVs and interview skills, they might actually be interested in or more interested in people management, project management, and skills that they need for their job. Does anyone have any questions around analysing feedback? All right, I will move on to step number 4. All right, so step number 4 is really around engaging the club as a whole and really understanding how all of your club members can work together for success. So the first thing that I just want to flag, and this was actually something that was raised to me in one of the first training sessions I ever attended was for Rotaract, was make everyone feel important and valued. So try and engage your members in a way that everyone has a job. And I think the way to do that is, it comes back to understanding their motivations. It doesn't have to be something that's particularly burdensome. It doesn't mean that a new member needs to now organise an event, and it might be the way that you approach it as well. So if you say to someone, how would you feel about organising this event for us? That might seem quite intimidating. But if it's something low key, like a social where everyone's just going out to dinner, if you break it up into steps and you just say, hey, we're looking at doing this event. Do you think you could create either, the invitation or the social media, like something for us to post on social media, or maybe just ask them, could they actually reach out to the restaurant? So kind of break it down so that you can engage people on a level that they feel comfortable with. But at the same time, providing them an opportunity to contribute actually enables them to feel like they're providing value. It means that it's important that they're there. Otherwise, if they've got nothing to do, it's really easy for them to feel like they are replaceable, I guess. So then one of the other elements then is to really look at what's your board structure. So yes, you'll already have positions within your club that you've had, for potentially forever and a day. But a really good question is to ask, well, is this structure actually working for us? Do we have the right number of people on our board? Do we, would it be beneficial? Does our board need to be smaller and more dynamic? Or at the moment, do we need more people engaged? But again, we can provide some more information on how boards are structured. One of the things that I think is useful is trying to make sure that your communication is targeted. So when our club was at a size of 40 to 50 members, our board was about 12 people. Now, that was a lot of people to try and keep across everything that we were doing. And so what we did, we actually split the board into administration and kind of projects and our pillars. So our administrative team was our president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer, and anything around the payments and administration and so forth was purely just managed by the administrative team rather than bogging down the rest of our kind of executionary team with all of those details. We definitely provided them updates, and we made sure that we were transparent in the things that were happening, but we didn't need to involve all 12 people in every single decision that was being made. Otherwise, you're just going to increase your chance that people will disagree and feel, there's an increase in conflict, and it'll be really slow for decision making. So I've provided some suggestions on how you could share the load here. Obviously, you can tailor it for what your club looks like. One of the things that I think is really good is to ensure that your executive board or your board is actually, they continue to own the meetings, because the meetings is where that's where your messaging is. That's where, you actually bring everyone together in what you're doing. So if you're going to be refreshing them, you kind of want to make, the board will help with that level of consistency. Then what you can do is empower your members to volunteer to bring all of your events to life. So whether that's social events or professional development or volunteering opportunities. And like I was saying before, you can start really simple in this instance. And I think the important thing to remember, and where I've seen other clubs struggle, is where there's this perception that the board needs to do all the work. Now, that's not the case. What we actually need to do is that the board are there to support the members in running events as well. So the board's kind of there to make sure stuff happens, but it's not really that important who actually runs that event. So the board, like I said, has overall responsibility that events are happening, but it's really important to engage members along that process as well. Now, Alex has had a question. She's got, are there strategies and ideas for invigorating, making exciting meetings, and also ideas for more professional development in a meeting, professional development session ideas, or external PD activities? Awesome question, Alex. This is my whole area. This is a whole area that I am passionate about in terms of professional development. I'll rattle off a couple of things now, but again, we can do a bit more of a when we do a session around the different sorts of events that we can do across the board, we can definitely delve into professional development. So one of the ideas that we implemented was something we call passion presentations. So members could sign up to do a passion presentation, and that was a 5-minute presentation on anything that they were passionate about. So we had everything from digital security to Indigenous mentoring programs to a member's experience and challenges with her own OCD. So yeah, it was a great opportunity for those people to practice their public speaking skills while also providing a deeper connection to the club as to what they were doing. Similarly, we've run like professional development icebreakers. So kind of all of those little icebreaker activities where everyone needs to get in a line from, the order of their birthday without talking, or like how far away they live from the meeting venue or things like that. So we did communication. We've also done workshops in meetings as well. So one of the ones that we did just a few months ago it's called The Girl and the Sailor. It's a professional development workshop on negotiation and communication. So that's something that I'd be happy to share with people as well. And then from an external perspective, we did a whole host of things. So one of the things we did, we actually partnered with Toastmasters, and we had 2 Toastmasters come in and do a free evening workshop for us on public speaking. We also partnered with PCYC and did a self-defense course. So yeah, like there's so many things that we can do in that space. So yeah, more than happy to go into some professional development things in particular in more detail. Similarly as well, looking at exciting meetings. So I'm really enjoying the topics that are coming up, because this will help us shape some of the webinars that we can do in the future. Harley's just said, I like to start meetings with drama games to get people relaxed and engage their creative thinking. And yeah, this is also an opportunity for you to play to your strengths. So if you've got someone in your club who's familiar with these sorts of activities, this is an opportunity for them to kind of be in the spotlight as well. So yeah, Harley, if there are, different activities that you can either share with us or point us in the direction of a really good source, then I think that's a really good opportunity as well. All right, so step number 5 is one that I think sometimes people feel a little bit intimidated with, and that's actually around running projects. And sometimes it comes back to knowing where to start. Sometimes it's also looking at the fact that a project is long-term, and that can be a little bit intimidating in itself. So I want to start off by just highlighting why projects are actually important. So the first one is that projects are longer term. So they'll still have a defined period, and they should have a defined period. But it means that rather than having all of these kind of ad hoc events, which is still really important, it means that your members are actually connected to an ongoing cause. So, for example, when we did the trip to Nepal, there were members who were involved in organising and understanding what was required for that trip. We then did a massive fundraising event, which was a Bollywood evening. So we partnered with the Nepalese community and our Rotary clubs and did this whole big Nepalese fiesta. And then we had people from our club actually go to Nepal and deliver on that mission. And so we kind of had this whole really nice story, and then at the end of it we had something to really show for it. So it wasn't just, we volunteer for this, these different groups and our contribution has been volunteer hours. It was, by us being in Nepal, we had 110 people who we saw at this medical camp that wouldn't have otherwise received medical treatment. And we helped rebuild this school where, there are 60 students there and they can now engage in their education more effectively. So it gives you that sense of achievement as well. Projects also provide you with the opportunity to connect with external organisations. So whether that's other charities or you're sponsoring Rotary clubs, it's really an opportunity for you to engage more deeply and broadly in the community. And they really give you a greater sense of purpose. So rather than, as I was mentioning, some ad hoc volunteering events, so whether it's, planting a tree or volunteering at a fun run or so forth, it really gives you the opportunity to do something bigger than yourself and something that you couldn't do alone, which is really cool. Now, with projects, it's, like I said, it can be intimidating. So start simple. One project that you could actually do is around, say Kiva and microfinance. So if you're not familiar with Kiva, Kiva is an online platform where you can create an account and loan money out to people in developing countries who are trying to create a living for themselves. So a typical example would be, a lady wants to purchase a goat, so she'll get a loan through Kiva to purchase the goat. She'll milk the goat and then she'll sell the milk, and so then she can repay the loan. And then once the loan's repaid, any money she earns from milking the goat is actually hers. So a project would be, all right, we want to create a Kiva fund so that we can fund 25 people 25 people with loans. So to do that, each loan is at least $25 in itself. So, you work out how much money you need to raise. You do an actual fundraising event around your own project. So it's a trivia event for creating your own Kiva account. So looking at running fundraising events for your projects rather than just fundraising events for other charities that you're passionate about. So then once you've actually done that fundraising event, you can then create the Kiva account, and then someone can actually maintain that account as well. One of the really cool things about Kiva is it's all online. So we've actually used Kiva in the past to engage members who, say, for a semester, they can't come to meetings because they've now got uni on meeting night. We'll say, you can actually help with managing our Kiva accounts. They're still engaged with the club, still contributing, feeling that sense of value, even though they can't come to meetings anymore. Now, like I said, projects can seem really intimidating, but there are a lot of resources that are available. So you've got RAWPS, which is the Rotary Australia Worldwide Community Service page. It's got there's a website that lists all of the Rorke's projects, and sometimes you can just kind of jump on a project that Rorke's is already doing, but they can also provide you with best practice guidelines on how to actually run a project as well. There's the Rotary International Project Showcase, which again, if you Google it, will show you projects from all around the world, and you can filter by, say, focus area. So say that you're interested in education, you can filter by education. If you're interested in a particular area, so say you want to do a particular initiative in South America, then you can filter by that. It's a little bit overwhelming because there's so much information, but if you've got an idea of what you're looking for, then yeah, you can get a couple of members to actually research that in a really effective way. We've got our Rotaract Awards. So the clubs that have won those awards have won them because they've done some really great projects and events. So we've got those resources as well, and we can definitely connect you with the people who've run those projects. We've got Rotary Down Under, which is our national magazine. Every edition is full of amazing projects that clubs are doing all around Australia and New Zealand. And then there is actually a how to run a project guide that Rotary International have put out in the past. This guide is fantastic. It tells you everything that you need to do, from identifying a community need to actually measuring your project and all the steps in between. We've posted this before in some of our training sites, but we can definitely link this in again as a reminder, and I'd really encourage you to use it as a resource because, like I said, it does have all of the steps that you need for project running. Now, does anyone have a question about selecting a focus area or project? Okay, if not, I'll move on to step number 6. So step number 6 is engaging sponsoring Rotary clubs. Now, the engagement of Rotary clubs, it doesn't need to happen in this order. Maybe you'll actually want to engage your Rotary clubs right at the start of this process. Maybe now's the right time. And that's depend on what your relationship is with your Rotary club and what you see, I guess, their skills as well. But our partnership with Rotary is absolutely critical to sustainability. So to be really, candid about my own experience, when I was president of my club, I certainly maintained connections with my sponsoring or our sponsoring Rotary clubs, but I didn't really push hard for them to attend meetings. If they attended meetings, that was awesome. But in terms of deeper ongoing engagement, it wasn't something I pushed for. And I guess I didn't feel that as an individual because I felt that I was competent to run the club. So I didn't really feel the need for them to be more involved. We were running really well. What's happened over the last couple of years, though, is just through some changes in leadership and different, movement of the guard and so forth, we've had some really big challenges. And I now appreciate in hindsight, if we had have had a stronger relationship with our sponsoring Rotary clubs, I don't think we would be at the point that we're at the moment, because our Rotary, we would have identified that we had issues earlier. Rotary would have helped earlier. And so instead of coming to them at this more or at a more dire stage, we would be just having that ongoing relationship. Now, I can also share as well, so when I was District Rotaract representative, there are at least, I would say there are 2 specific clubs within our district that have had amazing Rotary partnerships. And from my personal perspective, if those Rotarians weren't engaged in the way that they are, those clubs would have already fallen over and died because they have had challenging periods. But because the Rotarians have been there, there's kind of been this year ongoing energy, ongoing purpose, and so forth. So Rotary is critical for sustainability. Now, in terms of how you engage with your sponsoring clubs, maybe you've got one club, maybe you've got multiple clubs, maybe you've got one club officially, but a couple of clubs that are in that have provided you with support. So it's a really good opportunity for you to evaluate your relationships and understand where you think you actually can get the most value. If you've got a formal club on paper, but you're engaging more with another club, is there an opportunity for you to have that delicate situation where you bring the club that's providing you a lot of value actually on board as well? Now, those conversations can be really tricky, but they're really meaningful conversations to actually have. And I know clubs who have actually either shifted their sponsorship or added additional sponsors, but really the goal here is just to provide the clubs with the support that they need. I mentioned already around timing in terms of engagement. So what I mean by that is you might want to actually engage your Rotary clubs in this whole process. So in the whole brainstorming, analysis, project selection process. Or you might want to have an idea of where your club's actually at and then come to your Rotary club with, a little bit of a proposal and then see where they can provide input. Now, the really key thing is to understand that everyone has an agenda. So it doesn't matter whether it's a Rotaract club or an individual member or a Rotary club, everyone's kind of got their own goals that they're working towards. So it's really important that you engage strategically with your clubs. So understand where your needs and wants align with their needs and wants, and where you can bring those together to add value to both parties, and where you can actually compromise as well. So where you might actually say, well, we'll support you in volunteering for this event if you support us in, attending one of our events. But you want to make it mutual and proactive rather than an afterthought. So rather than, we've set up our whole trivia night, we've got 2 weeks to go, oh crap, we better invite Rotary. You actually invited Rotary at the very beginning by saying, we're interested in this project, we're going to run a trivia night, do you guys want to be involved, can they help with the organising committee, and so forth. So being really proactive helps everyone to have buy-in, which means that they're more likely to come anyway, rather than just feeling an obligation. Strategic engagement is also really important because there can be a lot of noise when you're working with Rotary clubs. So one of the challenges that I found was when we had 3 sponsoring Rotary clubs, there are a lot of events and volunteering and activities and basically competing priorities. And it was difficult to actually take a step back and look at what was actually valuable to our club rather than just getting involved in everything. So one of the ways that you can do that is that if you have this strategic meeting, so you bring, your board members and a couple of members from their clubs together, you can actually create a plan so that everyone knows what the expectations are and how you'll engage. So perhaps if you've got 3 sponsoring Rotary clubs, you say, all right, well, we'll support 2 major Rotary events per year. We'll advertise the rest of your events, but we'll really push 2 particular events. So let us know which events are the most important. And then the final element is just formalizing that as well. So having a member who's actually perhaps allocated to each club, make sure that they keep on, going to those clubs, providing updates and having a really clear contact point. And then look at memorandums of understanding as well, just to make sure everyone's on the same page and has a level of accountability as well. Now, step number 7, have fun. So I can't stress how important having fun is. When members are having fun, they're more engaged, they've got higher energy, they're more productive, and it's just a great environment to be around. It reminds us kind of why we're in Rotaract. So it doesn't mean that every meeting needs to be really casual or you can't be professional, because you can then define how you can bring fun into your meetings for your clubs. So, is it icebreakers? Is it drama activities? Is it happy coins? Is it, after our meetings, we all go for a drink and everyone, who would like to come down can come down? One of the things we've done as well is that, our board meetings, we would host it at a board member's house. We would rotate, so they would put on dinner and we'd have this kind of, social night for our board members while we made the executive decisions that were required to happen as well. So I mentioned consider your market. So what's fun for an 18-year-old and what's fun for a 30-year-old, again, might be really different things. So think about where you're meeting. Does that actually align with your brand? A lot of uni clubs will do free beer and pizza to get people in the door, and that's awesome. It works really well for uni students. If you've got, an older demographic, where are the cool, bars or venues that they want to hang around? And then look for opportunities to socialize in all of your events. So, is there anything, so like if people are coming early, is there a place for whether it's pre-drinks or lunch or something? What is then happening in during the event itself? So if you've got an actual, social event, what does that look like for your club? And then after events as well. So so for Sydney City Rotaract, one of the things that we have done and we've consistently done is rather than holding a meal in our meeting goes for 1 hour. It's all kind of, I'll say, Rotaract focused, and then afterwards we go to the pub, we have dinner, and we just socialise. Kind of got that segmented. I know other clubs that prefer to have a meal during their meeting as well. But yeah, feel free to post different elements in the chat as well as to how all of your clubs continue to have fun. I think it's good to continue to share ideas, and I know that there's some awesome suggestions that people are implementing. So, I appreciate my perspective is relatively narrow here as well. Now, the very final step is ongoing evaluation. So it's all fantastic to have a plan, but the best way to ensure that your plan is working or that it's effective is to actually evaluate on an ongoing basis. So it's a good understanding to understand, what are your measurables? What are you actually trying to achieve? How can you actually work out whether what you're doing is working or not? And yes, there's elements like, oh, great, we've got 40 members, so we've had membership growth, it must be working. But how can you actually track that and realize when you've got red flags that, all of a sudden we're not getting as many people to meetings and so forth, or where our retention's really poor at the moment, or whatever that looks like. So just by reviewing your strategy quarterly, that gives you a really good opportunity to go, all right, what's working, what's not working, what do we need to put more effort into, what do we need to maintain? Are there any new things that have come up that should now be included? And then really looking at, all right, well, how do you adjust your strategy then to make sure that the needs are met? And I think SurveyMonkey is a really good opportunity for ongoing evaluation. It's a good opportunity to just do a quarterly survey to get ongoing feedback and really check whether all your members are happy. Does anyone have any questions around those last couple of elements? All right, so that kind of concludes the formal part of the presentation. For those who'd like to stay, I'm happy to stay online and see if people have specific questions for their club or whether they've got any feedback on these 8 steps. Is there something that you think could be added in there? So if you'd like to ask a question, now's your time. Otherwise, if there aren't any questions, I'm happy to close the session off. I really want to thank everyone for their involvement. I've been checking the views, and we've had more than 20 people engaged for the whole time that this session's been running. So it's been fantastic for those who've been able to contribute and stay involved, and I hope this has provided some really good value for you. We will definitely look at we'll run the next webinar on so kind of the possibilities and events that we can run in Rotaract per Holly's suggestion. And we'll also do a session on professional development. But if anyone's got any other suggestions on topics that you'd like covered, please just send either me or the team a message, and we will engage accordingly. I've just realised a couple of different comments have come up that I hadn't seen pop up. Starting with, so Harley's just talked about some of the drama activities that they're doing. Drew's commented about Rotaractor Wiki. So yes, there is a Rotaractor Wiki, and we can definitely add more information on that. We've also got the, so on our Rotaract Australia resources page, there's a lot of information at the moment there, on there at the moment. We want to try and clean that up a bit. But if there's resources that you want, post in our Australian Rotaractors page and we'll make sure we get them to you. One of the ones that was recently desired was around how to chair an AGM. So we've pulled together that resource for people, and we'll share that. So whatever it is that you guys need, we will look at helping with. Answering Kangan's question, yes, we'll post the how to run a project guide. Alex's question, we have excess funds in accounts we either need to donate or contribute to an international project. Is it okay to research and select 1 or 2 already set up ongoing international projects to do, or is there another way to utilise funds to make a meaningful international contribution? Kiva is actually a really good option for something like that, Alex. And one of the great things about Kiva is you continue to loan out your money. So when someone actually repays the loan, you can loan it out again. So it continues to be used and used and used. And with Kiva, you can actually select which people on Kiva you're actually donating to as well. So you can, for example, decide that you want to donate to people who are working in education projects or people who are working on their own businesses or things like that. So I would recommend Kiva as a really good ongoing engagement opportunity for your club. If not that, maybe look at some of our, other initiatives that we've got going. So we've obviously got End Polio Now. We've got Rotaractors Against Malaria. They're kind of the other two that come to mind. I'm sure there's, you can definitely research and absolutely donate to any other causes as well. But I just try and make it meaningful, to your point. Another question, what if it often feels like Rotary clubs only want us for bodies on the ground for their events rather than actually acting as mentoring? Awesome question, Holly. I think that really comes back to, so there's a manual that is just the Rotaract manual, and it talks about what the responsibilities of Rotary clubs are to sponsor a Rotaract club. And, I think that's an opportunity if that's a challenge and you don't feel like you can have that conversation with your sponsoring Rotary club. So like I said, the first thing I do is try and talk to your sponsoring Rotary club, and develop this strategy and partnership. If they're really not engaging, they're not seeing your value, they just want to use you as slave labour, then that's when I would start to talk to your district Rotaract representative or perhaps the Rotary Youth Chair, the Rotaract Youth Chair from Rotary, and look at how you can actually get some support from leadership within Rotaract to help build those relationships a little bit further. Would be happy to have a discussion with you offline on that in a little bit more detail, Holly, or if that's actually, we could also do another webinar on bridging the gap between Rotary and Rotaract. That's also a deck I've kind of got handy. Sorry, just looking at the other questions. Do you have an example or survey templates for the quarterly surveys? So Holly, there is actually, it's like a member or a club health check. That's a good place to start because it's got kind of a list of everything that you should be doing as a Rotaract club. I'll find the health check and I'll post that as well. And then in terms of quarterly surveys, I would just keep it super simple. So I don't know of an example at the moment, but I'd keep it simple in terms of, we had those 5 areas. We had meetings, projects, volunteering, professional development, and social. And so you could make it as simple as rate our meetings on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being very dissatisfied, 5 being very satisfied, and then quantitatively manage it like that. And then you can have a qualitative part to say, what suggestions do you have for building our, making our meetings better? That's also something that we can try and help with. And then I think the last question that we've got is just from Alex. So how to increase retention or engage potential members and young people. So I think this really comes back, Alex, to step number 1, which was motivation. So it's really good. And I think we do a great job of recruiting Rotaractors. They come in, they're really excited and they love what we're doing. But the retention bit's hard because we kind of, at least what I've seen in most clubs, is we forget about our existing members and we're constantly focused on managing all of the new members that are coming in the door. And I think a really good thing to do is similarly, so yes, you might have a coffee or a meeting with, someone when they join. How can you set things up so that, can you have, it'll depend on your number of members, but can you have a quarterly coffee catch up with them? Or something that, is also really good to do is actually develop a buddy system. So when a new member joins, they actually have a buddy with an existing member, and that existing member's job is to make sure that that member's engaged, their needs are being met. One of the other things that one of the other things that you can do as well is we've had like a membership tracker be increased, a membership tracker be introduced as well, so that you've got an idea of, this person's missed 3 meetings. Let's reach out to them and make sure that they're okay. And it doesn't have to be, why aren't you coming to Rotaract? It's purely just, are you okay? And I've had people say, oh yeah, I'm sorry, I've had stuff on at the moment, but I really appreciate you asking. So we can find, we definitely have all of these retention ideas and suggestions also collated, so can definitely pull that across as well. The second part of your question, Alex, and looks like it'll be the last question now for this session, is how to engage potential members and young people. So some of this comes back to what your brand is. When you understand what your purpose is for your Rotaract club, it's easier for you to engage people in that space. So at the moment, we've got a Rotaract club that's trying to start up in Parramatta. And one of the suggestions one of the things that came up on my newsfeed recently was an advertisement for young business professionals in Parramatta. Like, it's a networking group that exists. So how can you actually, it's not just about approaching that group and trying to get them to join Rotaract. It's about actually partnering with them. So perhaps they want more people to join their business networking initiative as well. So can you actually run a networking night between Rotaract and the business networking group? And, can you actually cross-pollinate? So I think, engaging potential members really comes to collaborations, comes to partnerships, and kind of leveraging existing platforms rather than isolated incidents. I guess the question is, does that answer your question? We can certainly come back to, more strategies on membership engagement, but I think it's a really good question to have. We are still at 24 people, which is exciting. I really appreciate everyone who's stayed on the line. So, more questions. Okay. So Drew, how important is attendance tracking? Rotary seems to be moving away from it, but what's the better way to assess overall health of membership? So I think that comes back to engagement. So yes, meeting attendance is one thing, but how are your members actually contributing? From my perspective, if a member's attending meetings, but they're not actually volunteering at anything, they're not actually organising any events, really, they're kind of just it's kind of just a filler. You want people to be engaged and contributing. So I think a better way to do it is to actually have, when a member starts, maybe even have just like an engagement plan or a member plan, and understand, what are the skills that they want to develop, what they want to be involved in, and actually make sure that that membership plan's actually being achieved. I completely agree. Like, attendance should just be used as another metric, so to speak. So it's your way of tracking when someone might be disengaged rather than an element of success, if that makes sense. So yeah, attendance is good, but you really want engagement. But you can still use attendance as an indication of when people aren't engaged. Does that help to answer your question, Drew? Oh, here we go. Someone's commented from the RA page. I think it's more about what you achieve as a team, not how often an individual attends. You have to encourage people to be their best with the time that they have. Members can still make a big difference with a small amount of time if they're committed. So yeah, that kind of reflects the point that I was trying to make before around a member who can't attend meetings, but they're managing our Kiva page, for example. So look at how people can engage outside of meetings as well. So thanks, Drew. Last call for questions. All right, this has been awesome, everyone. Thank you so very much for your contributions and for engaging. Like I said, I'm glad that this has provided value to some of you, and it's given a really good indication for us as to what some future topics for these sessions could be as well. So pretty excited to continue along with this thread. So have a great evening, everyone, and we'll get those resources out to you as soon as possible. Thank you so much.